저 안 사랑하는 거죠?
Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the complete storyline and breaking down the epic recap of Reborn as a Kingmaker of my useless Chaebol dad. Before we unpack this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Without further ado, let's get into the recap.
My name was Kang Ri. I was the beloved princess of the Grand Era Kingdom. My life was filled with immense respect and absolute power. Everything was supposed to be completely perfect and highly glorious. However, fate had a cruel twist waiting for me. On the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, a sudden accident took my life. The darkness swallowed me whole. I truly thought it was the absolute end of my soul. But I opened my eyes again. I was no longer the royal princess of the Era Kingdom. I had awakened inside the frail body of a young girl. The air around me felt cold and incredibly damp in this strange room. "The madam is taking you to greet the chairman. You better hurry up and put this on." A harsh voice broke my confusion. A maid tossed a pile of shabby clothes right at my tiny, shivering feet on the floor. I stared at the pathetic garments. Why did I have to wake up in a body like this? She was the biological daughter of a wealthy family, yet she had everything completely stolen by an arrogant, evil imposter. The servants blatantly ignored her presence. Her own parents had abandoned her without a second thought. She was a deeply miserable child. I could physically feel the lingering sorrow in her tiny, broken heart. I was suddenly pulled into the harsh reality of her past memories. "Stop it, you countryside beggar! Who told you to come back?" Her sister mocked her endlessly. "You should have just died outside alone, but this is my home too." The original Danae had cried pitifully. Her sister scoffed loudly. "Why is this your home? You are stupid and terribly ugly. You do not deserve to be a part of our great family." The dark memories showed her parents standing close by. They did absolutely nothing to stop the relentless abuse. "Mom, Dad, tell her to stop," she pleaded. But her sister only intensified the cruel torment. "She told me I am not real family. She told me to leave the house," Danae had sobbed. Her mother glared at her with pure disgust. "Lock this wretched girl in the dark storage room immediately this instant. Do not give her a single drop of water to drink. You need to know your proper place clearly." Those were the chilling words of her own mother. Even wild tigers do not dare to bite their own precious cubs. Those disgusting humans had absolutely no right to be called parents. They were vile monsters disguised as high society elites. I felt a burning, righteous anger rising within my new, incredibly fragile body. I stood up slowly and smoothed out the pathetic rags they gave me. "Where do you think you are going right now? Are you totally crazy?" the maid yelled aggressively. "How dare you give me orders? Step aside." The maid recoiled in absolute shock. The pathetic girl who usually cowered was now speaking with the commanding authority of a royal princess. I walked out of that wretched room with my head held very high. I soon overheard a sickening conversation in the main luxury hall. It was entirely about me. "Have you thought about my idea?" a man asked casually. It was Danae's older brother. "About engaging her today. The third son of Chairman Joe is a complete fool," another voice chimed in. "Just being associated with that family is too much for a useless girl like her." They were laughing wickedly at my bitter expense. I sneered internally. Wow, they are truly amazing individuals. How can people be so incredibly shameless? Everyone in high society knew the third son of Chairman Joe was completely out of his empty mind. They wanted to send their own flesh and blood to such a terrible man. They wanted to use her as a cheap business tool to secure a corporate deal. Was that something a real human being would ever dare to do? Did she agree to this ridiculous plan? Someone asked. What does she know about business? What if she says she does not want to do it? The brother just smirked. I could not hold back my royal fury anymore. "Where do you think you are?" my so-called father shouted angrily as I entered. "Why are you interrupting us right now? What is entirely wrong with you?" He looked at me with deep disdain and blatant anger. "Why? It seems this is much better than the dirty rags you gave me to wear," I replied calmly. "And why can I not interrupt? You locked me in a room without food. Now you suddenly want to silence my voice." I glared right into his cowardly eyes. "Even a tiger does not harm its cubs. You did this horrible thing to your real daughter. Are you truly a parent? My voice was steady, carrying the heavy weight of a ruler. Are you completely crazy? Watch your dirty mouth. You have absolutely zero manners, my biological father screamed in a blind rage. He raised his hand as if he wanted to strike me right there in the hall. Suddenly, the grand oak doors opened wide. The powerful patriarch of the family, the grandfather, walked in slowly. I am deeply sorry, father, my biological dad stammered, immediately lowering his head. I looked at the old man closely. I bowed politely but kept my royal dignity intact. Grandfather, I have something very important to tell you. The large room went dead silent at my sudden, bold declaration. How can a small child be so incredibly calm? The old man muttered quietly to himself. He looked at me with a hint of genuine curiosity. All right then, go ahead and speak your mind. Let us hear it all now. It is famously said that children resemble their parents. When parents are loving, children can practice filial piety. However, my father is not like that at all. He is incredibly cruel and unjust to me. I took a deep breath. So, I have a desperate request for you, grandfather. Please change my father entirely. The loud gasp that echoed through the grand hall was highly dramatic. Everyone was stunned. The old man chuckled softly. Bold and sharp, yet you have excellent manners. You are exactly like me when I was much younger. My biological father was practically turning purple with an uncontrollable rage. You ungrateful little wretch. We fed you and kept you warm. Now you want to change your father, he yelled loudly. Forget the business engagement. She needs to go to a mental hospital immediately today. Grandfather slammed his heavy wooden cane down hard. The one who needs to go to a mental hospital is you. She is your biological daughter. We lost her for years. We finally found her. You treat her like dirt. The old man looked at me with surprisingly soft eyes. Danae, if you truly do not want to live with your parents, come live with this old man. It was a very generous offer from the strict family patriarch. I would love to stay with you, grandfather, I replied sweetly. But you are old. I worry I might cause you too much trouble and stress. That would be a terrible sin for a young granddaughter to ever commit. Grandfather laughed out loud again. Smart and deeply filial. Fine. Then who exactly would you like to be your new father? I scanned the large room carefully. My eyes landed on a man standing lazily there. That man over there. I want him to be my new father, I declared highly confidently. The man I pointed at looked deeply shocked. It was Kang Yoon. He was the most notorious troublemaker in the entire family. Me? What on earth are you talking about right now? Me? Be your dad? Yoon stammered in pure disbelief. The rest of the family started laughing mockingly. They thought my choice was incredibly foolish indeed. Are you truly serious? You actively chose the infamous playboy, my biological mother sneered. If he drinks too much, he might feed you to wild animals. Be careful. You made this choice yourself today. Do not regret this later, my evil sister mocked. He cannot even take care of himself. You will come crying and begging to return to us. I just smiled very calmly. The one crying will be you very soon. Yoon stepped forward with a sudden spark of fiery defiance. Watch carefully. See if I can raise Dana well or not. He grabbed my small hand gently. I might be lacking, but I am not completely stupid at all. I would never sell you to a fool like that third son, Yoon declared loudly for all to hear. I will not feed you to wild animals either. Let us go home now. I smiled brightly. Yes, let us go home right now. As we walked away, Yoon muttered quietly to himself. Wow, I just came to drink some tea and ended up with a free daughter. Thanks a lot. We left the grand mansion behind without a single backward glance. Everyone whispered behind our backs in the hall. They wondered if this notorious playboy could actually raise a young girl properly. They had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with. I was a princess. We arrived at his luxurious but incredibly messy house. Welcome, little miss. A very formal butler greeted us at the front door. I looked around the massive estate. It was highly extravagant but lonely. Yoon sat down heavily on the expensive sofa. Danae, can I ask you one thing right now? Why did you pick me to be your dad? I looked at him with innocent but sharp eyes. I just knew it from the start. I truly felt that you absolutely had to be my father. I lied smoothly. The real reason was that he was the only one who showed a tiny bit of humanity in that wretched, cold-hearted household full of snakes. Everyone knows Chairman Joe's son is a complete fool. Sending a real daughter there as a business tool is deeply evil. Is that something a human should do? Yoon repeated the exact thoughts I had earlier. In my past royal life, my biological father looked exactly like him. It was a strange twist of fate. In this distant modern era, meeting someone who resembled my real father felt like an incredible blessing. Butler Kim, prepare the absolute finest room for Danae, Yoon ordered loudly. No, wait. Go to the premium department store and buy everything. Give her the absolute best. He was surprisingly very sweet. Listen closely, Danae. You are now the real daughter of Kang Yoon. If you want the shiny stars or the moon, I will pluck them for you. He patted my head gently. Do not worry about what others say to you. Yes, I truly love you the most in the whole wide world, Dad, I replied with a bright, childlike smile. Internally, my sharp mind was already scheming. Some things never change, even after 1,000 years. The one who totally wins Chairman Kang's favor will inherit the massive family empire. But now that I am here, the rules will heavily change. I will be the one who decides the true master of this rich family. The very next day, I was eating fresh fruits in the grand living room. Where is Dad? I asked the busy maids. They sighed heavily. Where else could he be? He probably went car racing again. It is his habit. Racing is actually the slightly better option, another maid complained bitterly. He goes to underground clubs, plays games, and gambles all night long. Recently, he even brought a live panda home as a pet. I raised a delicate eyebrow. A live panda? He constantly calls it his baby, the maid continued. It is so frustrating to watch him waste his life away every single day. I nodded slowly, forming a grand plan. I started crying extremely loudly. The maids panicked completely in an instant. Butler Kim, Danae is crying uncontrollably, a maid reported urgently. The young master needs to come home right away now. Yoon rushed home in an absolute panic. My precious princess, what is entirely wrong? Tell Daddy exactly what happened. He looked genuinely distressed. Did you feel lonely? Should I send you to a park? Why do you not go with me? I sobbed pitifully on the floor. Daddy is just really busy, he stammered nervously. Busy with what exactly? Clubbing, fast racing, or illegal gambling? I asked with tears. Do you really like your shiny sports cars much more than me? I whimpered sadly. No, who told you that utter nonsense? Yoon panicked. The guard said your fast cars are your #1 treasure in life. That is a total lie. I absolutely do not need sports cars at all. Danae is the most important thing to me, Yoon declared frantically. I do not believe you. I cried louder. Yoon turned to his loyal butler. Butler Kim, sell all my expensive cars right now. Even the super limited editions. The butler looked absolutely shocked but nodded quickly. What about the cute panda? I asked softly, wiping fake tears. I am not your real baby. The panda is your true baby, I pouted dramatically. You think the panda is cuter than me? Send it to the zoo right now. Yoon was deeply cornered by my strategic guilt trip plan. You strongly prefer gaming and clubbing over spending quality time with me, I added for extra measure. People say I will never be truly loved by anyone. You do not really love me either, do you, dear Dad? Yoon looked entirely devastated. Butler Kim, clear out my entire gaming room and cut all TIs with the clubs. He knelt down and wiped my face gently. Thank you, Dad. I smiled sweetly. The trap worked. The house servants were completely amazed by my bold actions. She is highly incredible. The chairman could not stop his bad habits despite shouting for years. She achieved it with just a few well-placed tears. Yoon waved a very sad goodbye to his precious panda as it was safely taken away. A few short days later, a loud call came from the main family estate. The chairman wants to see the young lady immediately. Tell them I simply cannot go today, I said smoothly over the phone. But will grandfather not be very angry if we do not visit him? Yoon asked nervously. He already dislikes me anyway. It does not matter. At the main grand estate, grandfather was highly furious. How dare Yoon make me wait like this? Is he truly that busy? The evil sister smirked. What is he busy with? Just playing, eating, and petting pandas. Just then, Yoon and I arrived at the grand estate looking completely calm. Look at the time. You are incredibly late, the evil sister sneered loudly. I am sorry, grandfather. We had to send the panda away. Send the rare panda away, grandfather asked in sheer absolute disbelief. Check if this is entirely true. He loved that animal deeply. The personal assistant checked quickly and nodded in confirmation. The sun must truly be rising in the west today, grandfather muttered in profound shock. That is not all, I chimed in happily. Dad also sold his sports cars, quit the loud clubs, and stopped playing games. My dad is the absolute best, I cheered loudly for everyone to hear. Grandfather looked at Yoon as if seeing a completely different person. I cannot believe this reckless fool has come to his senses. Dan, I will personally give you a very special mission, grandfather announced proudly. If you thoroughly succeed, I will give you a massive reward. Next Friday is my birthday party. Bring your father. If you can perfectly make him act with true dignity and class, I will give you a massive building in Gangnam. A grand building in Gangnam meant a 30-story skyscraper. It was a golden, shining chance. Leave it entirely to me, grandfather, I smiled highly confidently. Yoon panicked instantly. Wait, I deeply hate formal stuff like that. I am definitely not doing it. I cannot do it. But protests were useless. The rigorous training began the very next morning at dawn. Stand up perfectly straight. Dignity comes entirely from your posture, I commanded like a strict royal tutor. Yoon groaned deeply in harsh pain. Hold this exact pose for half a season, I ordered firmly. What is half a season? Yoon cried out in total confusion. It means roughly 1 hour. Keep your back completely straight. Butler Kim, correct him. This is the very beginning of my master plan to completely take over the family, I thought silently. Wake up, Dad. We have a giant kingdom to conquer. Yoon struggled, but he slowly began to look refined. Meanwhile, my former wicked biological family was plotting against me in utter secret. Who knew he would absolutely adore Dana so much? The biological mother hissed angrily. We gave him too much pure power. Do not worry at all, mother, the evil sister Walla smirked wickedly. At the upcoming birthday party, I will play a very special instrument. Grandfather's heart will surely return to our side immediately. Grandfather deeply loves the ancient, rich culture of the Era Kingdom, Walla explained softly. I bought a rare musical score at a high-end auction. It belonged to Princess Kangri of the Old Era Kingdom. It was highly incredibly ironic. They were actively planning to use my own ancient music to completely defeat me in this new life. It is only half of the score, but it is perfect, Walla laughed highly wickedly. The glittering night of the grand birthday party finally arrived. The main hall was filled with elite guests. I walked in totally alone, dressed beautifully. Where is your useless father? The relatives sneered. Is he still entirely busy learning basic manners at home? They mocked extremely loudly. A man who practically lived in dirty clubs cannot learn class. He will probably show up in a cheap floral shirt soon. Grandfather was entirely foolish to expect any dignity from him, another relative whispered loudly. They all completely believed I had failed the mission. They waited eagerly for Yoon to publicly humiliate us. Young Master Kang Yoon has officially arrived, the main announcer suddenly declared. The massive double doors swung open slowly. The entire grand room fell into an absolute, breathless, and stunning silence. He wore a perfectly tailored black designer suit. His hair was styled highly elegantly. His physical posture was impeccably straight and powerful. He looked incredibly dashing. Is that really Kang Yoon? They gasped. Expensive elegant clothes really do make the true man, another shocked guest whispered in sheer awe. My useless Chaebol dad was finally entirely ready to take his rightful shining place at the absolute very top. The entire grand hall stared in absolute silence as my father walked down the wide staircase. He looked like a completely different person today. His posture was perfectly straight. His eyes held a newfound confidence. The mocking whispers from our cruel relatives died instantly. They could not believe their own eyes. The notoriously wild playboy was completely gone. In his place stood a highly refined and powerful corporate true heir. Grandfather stood up slowly from his large velvet chair. His strict eyes widened in sheer shock and deep admiration. He tightly gripped his heavy wooden cane. A rare, proud smile slowly appeared on his wrinkled face. Is that truly my reckless son Yoon? Grandfather asked loudly. His voice echoed through the massive room. Everyone nodded in silent agreement. My dad walked smoothly toward the main stage and bowed highly gracefully. Happy birthday, father, Yoon said with a deep and respectful tone. I deeply apologize for my past foolish behaviors. I am entirely ready to take my rightful family duties seriously. The older man nodded happily. Grandfather turned his sharp gaze toward me. Dan, you actually did the totally impossible. You transformed this useless fool into a true man. He signaled his loyal assistant. A shiny golden envelope was brought out. I am a man of my exact word, grandfather declared proudly. Here is the official deed to the 30-story skyscraper in Gangnam. It belongs entirely to you now. I took the envelope with a bright and innocent smile. My biological parents looked absolutely green with intense envy. My wicked sister Walla clenched her fists so hard her knuckles turned white. They were completely failing to steal the shiny spotlight from us tonight. Walla suddenly stepped forward with a fake sweet smile. Grandfather, I have prepared a very special gift for you tonight. I know how deeply you love the rich ancient culture of the Grand Era Kingdom. She bowed low. I managed to acquire a highly rare musical score, Walla announced loudly. It originally belonged to the legendary Princess Kangri herself. I will play it for you right now on the traditional stringed instrument. Grandfather looked highly intrigued. Princess Kangri, that is truly a remarkable find. Please play it immediately. Walla smirked wickedly at me. She sat down gracefully behind the beautiful ancient wooden instrument. She began to pluck the heavy strings. The music was admittedly beautiful. It was a highly familiar melody to my ears. Of course, it was familiar. It was the exact song I composed myself over 1,000 long years ago. The elite guests closed their eyes in deep appreciation. However, right at the beautiful climax of the song, the music stopped abruptly. The sudden harsh silence filled the grand hall. Everyone looked highly confused. Walla sighed with fake deep sorrow. I apologize, grandfather. The ancient score was heavily damaged. Only the first half survived history. It is totally impossible for anyone in this modern world to finish the song. Grandfather looked deeply disappointed by the sudden stop. What a terrible shame. It was a highly magnificent piece of art. My biological family looked highly proud of their dramatic stunt. I could not hold back now. I laughed softly but loudly enough for everyone to hear. Impossible to finish. That is highly ridiculous. All eyes instantly snapped toward me. Walla glared at me with pure hatred burning in her dark, narrow eyes. What do you know about ancient royal music, you stupid country beggar? Walla hissed angrily. Grandfather raised his hand to completely silence her. Do you know the rest of this ancient song, my smart little Danae? I walked confidently toward the center stage. Yes, grandfather. I know the entire melody perfectly well. I sat down gracefully in front of the large traditional instrument. I adjusted the thick strings very quickly. Do not make a massive fool of yourself, my biological mother sneered loudly. You will ruin the grand party. I completely ignored her harsh words. I closed my eyes and let my past royal memories guide my tiny hands. My fingers danced rapidly across the heavy strings. The beautiful melody resumed exactly where Walla had stopped, but my music was totally different. It was packed with raw emotion, deep sorrow, and royal grand power. The music swelled and filled every corner of the massive room. The guests were entirely mesmerized by the flawless performance. Even the professional musicians in the hall watched my moving hands in absolute pure awe. I played the grand finale with a highly powerful strike on the tight strings. The beautiful echoing sound lingered in the quiet air. When I finally opened my eyes, the entire hall erupted into deafening loud applause. Grandfather was crying silent tears of pure joy. That was completely flawless. It felt exactly like the Grand Princess Kangri was playing it herself in this very room. He clapped his wrinkled hands highly proudly. Walla was shaking with uncontrollable rage and deep humiliation. Her grand plan was completely ruined. How did you know the missing parts? She screamed loudly. You are just a totally useless girl from the country. I smiled purely and looked her right in the eyes. True royal elegance cannot be bought at a cheap auction. It is born strictly within the soul. My biological family looked entirely defeated and completely embarrassed. Yoon walked over and lifted me up in his strong arms. That is my highly amazing daughter, he cheered loudly. She is clearly a true genius. Grandfather laughed heartily, looking at us with immense deep affection. Yoon, you and Danae are the bright future of this family, grandfather announced clearly. The cruel relatives gasped in deep shock. The balance of absolute power had officially shifted to us. Our new golden era began. I hugged my new dad tightly around his neck. The long-lost princess had finally found her true home. I was reborn as the ultimate Kingmaker, and I was going to make sure my new father ruled this entire massive empire. The days following the grand birthday party were highly chaotic but completely glorious. The entire family dynamic had fundamentally changed overnight. The relatives who used to completely ignore us now smiled very sweetly. My new dad, Yoon, fully embraced his brand new role. He started attending high-level corporate board meetings every single day. He wore expensive designer suits and carried a highly professional leather briefcase everywhere. He was actually incredibly smart. His years of wild playing had simply masked his sharp business instincts. He quickly solved several major company crises that the older executives had completely failed to fix for months. Grandfather watched his youngest son with immense pride. "I always deeply knew you had the true fire inside you, Yoon," he said during a private dinner. "You just needed the right reason to finally wake up and fight." "Danae is my absolute reason, father," Yoon replied highly seriously. He patted my head gently. I smiled back sweetly while eating my expensive steak. Everything was currently going exactly according to my master plan. However, a sudden dark storm was brewing entirely in secret. My former biological family was definitely not going to give up without a dirty fight. They were losing all their power and influence at a highly rapid pace. One sunny afternoon, I was playing in the massive garden. Butler Kim suddenly approached me looking deeply worried. "Young miss, your biological mother is standing at the front gates. She demands to see you immediately." I sighed entirely softly. I knew they would eventually try something desperate. "Let her in, Butler Kim," I commanded calmly. "But make sure all the hidden security cameras are fully recording everything in the garden." My biological mother stomped toward me with a highly furious look. She looked deeply tired and entirely desperate. "You ungrateful little monster," she hissed loudly. "You completely ruined our entire perfect lives." "I did nothing at all to ruin your lives," I replied highly calmly. "You completely ruined it yourselves when you locked your own child in a dark room. I merely found someone who actually acts like a real human parent." She grabbed my small arm entirely tightly. "Listen carefully, you little beggar. Grandfather is changing his entire official will. He is leaving the main company to Yoon. You have to tell him to stop this entirely. You must absolutely tell grandfather you want to return to us right now," she demanded harshly. Her sharp nails dug painfully into my skin. I did not flinch at all. I just stared at her with extremely cold, royal eyes. "Why would I ever do that?" I asked entirely simply. "You wanted to sell me to a total fool for a cheap business deal. Now you want me back just for the massive inheritance money. You are truly disgusting entirely. If you do not help us immediately, I will legally destroy Yoon," she threatened wickedly. "I have highly fake documents that prove he is currently embezzling massive company funds. I will send him straight to jail." She smiled a highly evil smile. "Without him, you are just a totally useless orphan again. You will be completely powerless." I remained perfectly calm on the outside, but inside, my royal fury was burning highly hot. "Are you truly entirely finished speaking?" I asked entirely coldly. "Because you are currently standing on highly private property, and you just loudly confessed to a massive felony crime right in front of my cameras." Her arrogant face went completely pale. "What are you talking about right now?" she stammered nervously. I pointed subtly at the hidden security cameras placed high in the tall trees. "Everything was fully recorded. Your physical assault on a minor and your open blackmail threats are all captured perfectly," I stated highly firmly. "Butler Kim, please call the local police immediately right now. We have an intruder on the grounds." She totally panicked and tried to run away quickly, but the heavy gates were already securely locked tight. The local police arrived within just a few short minutes. They arrested her right there in the beautiful garden. The massive scandal hit the local news immediately. My biological parents were fully exposed as cruel, abusive monsters and absolute corporate criminals. The board of directors fired them entirely from the main company. They were totally banished from high society completely. My wicked sister Wale was sent away to live in a highly remote countryside village entirely alone. They finally got exactly what they truly deserved in the end. Grandfather was deeply shocked by their extreme cruelty but highly relieved the dark truth was finally entirely out. He officially named Yoon as the sole heir to the massive family empire later that exact same week. Yoon threw a massive celebratory party at our grand estate. It was entirely beautiful. The entire house was brightly decorated. We were officially the absolute undeniable masters of the massive wealthy family now. I could never have done any of this without you, my smart little princess, Yoon whispered softly to me. He hugged me incredibly tightly. You truly saved my life entirely, Danae. I will protect you forever. And I will always protect you too, Dad, I replied highly sincerely. I finally felt entirely safe in this strange modern world. I was no longer just the tragic, forgotten royal princess of the ancient era kingdom. I was Kang Dana now. I was the absolute highly powerful Kingmaker. I successfully turned a completely useless playboy into a true corporate king. And we lived happily and extremely wealthy for the rest of our bright days. The transition of power was remarkably smooth. Yoon stepped into the Grand Chairman office with immense pride. He looked entirely regal in his tailored suit. I watched him carefully from the leather couch. He was ready. Being a corporate king was totally different from royal ruling. But human greed and ambition remain exactly the same. I used my ancient royal education to guide him completely. He listened to my advice highly attentively. We faced our very first major challenge early next month. A rival company named the Jin Group tried to launch a massive hostile takeover. They falsely assumed Yoon was still just a highly foolish and reckless playboy. They aggressively bought our company shares in absolute secret. Their evil chairman smirked proudly during the open press conference. He publicly declared that the Kang family empire would crumble within a few short weeks. Yoon paced the grand office floor highly nervously. He looked at me with deep concern in his sharp eyes. I calmly sipped my sweet apple juice. A royal princess never ever panics in the face of sudden fierce battle. I calmly told him to completely freeze all our current market assets. Then I advised him to secretly purchase their rival supply chains. It was a classic ancient military strategy. You simply cut off their vital food source. Yoon immediately smiled brightly and executed the bold plan. The Jin Group suddenly found themselves entirely unable to produce their goods. Their hidden hostile takeover collapsed rapidly within just 3 short days. Their evil chairman was forced to publicly apologize on national television. Our family company stock prices skyrocketed entirely to the moon. Yoon was widely praised as an absolute corporate genius by the busy media. You are a true lifesaver, my incredibly smart daughter, Yoon laughed happily. He tossed me high into the air and caught me gently. I giggled entirely softly. We were the absolute perfect team in this modern kingdom. Grandfather observed our rapid success with deep immense joy. His failing health began to improve highly significantly. Having a peaceful and completely strong family brought him immense comfort in his highly old age. I continued my rigorous studies at the elite private academy. I purposely kept my highly advanced intellect a secret from my peers. I acted like a totally normal young girl to strictly avoid any unwanted public attention. But my brilliant mind was always constantly working highly fast. I reviewed massive corporate files entirely hidden inside my school textbooks. I secretly drafted complex business contracts during my boring math classes. One entirely rainy afternoon, a strange new student transferred to my elite class. His name was Han Tae-moo. He possessed a highly cold demeanor and intensely sharp eyes. He stared at me with completely suspicious intent. I immediately sensed a highly familiar aura completely surrounding him. It was the distinct sharp aura of a highly trained royal knight. My past life instincts completely flared up in deep sudden warning and high alert. He cornered me near the quiet school library after class. You are definitely not a normal young child, he whispered entirely coldly. You play the ancient era kingdom music exactly like the lost royal family members. My tiny heart skipped a highly sudden beat. How could this young modern boy entirely know about the hidden ancient royal family? I maintained my perfectly innocent facial expression. I tilted my head entirely in confusion. I have absolutely no idea what you are totally talking about, I replied highly sweetly. I just learned that old song from a highly random internet video. He narrowed his sharp eyes in pure deep absolute disbelief. I will definitely uncover your true hidden identity, he threatened entirely softly before walking away. I watched his tall retreating back highly carefully. The peaceful days of my new life were suddenly entirely over. I quickly grabbed my highly encrypted private cell phone. I immediately sent a highly secure text message to my dad. We have a highly unexpected new problem. We need to do a deep background check on a new schoolboy, Yoon replied almost completely instantly. I am entirely on it right now, my dear princess. Do not worry at all. Dad will completely handle everything perfectly. His strong reassurance warmed my cold tiny hands completely. I walked out of the quiet school building with a highly firm step. If this strange boy truly wanted to uncover my hidden ancient past, he would have to fight an entirely powerful modern Chaebol empire first to reach me. I am completely no longer the helpless dying princess of the lost era kingdom. I am Kang Dan-a. I am the absolute ultimate Kingmaker, and I will fiercely crush anyone who dares to threaten my new beautiful bright kingdom. We gathered in the highly secure underground office that evening. Butler Kim displayed the detailed background report on the large glowing screen. Han Tae-moo was completely not just a highly random new transfer student. He was the secret hidden heir to the massive Han Corporation. They were our absolute biggest rival in the entire global market. His sudden transfer to my private school was definitely a highly calculated hostile dark move. They are actively trying to completely investigate us through you, Yoon said entirely seriously. He crossed his strong arms tightly. This is highly unacceptable. I will entirely double your hidden security detail now. That is highly unnecessary right now, Dad, I replied entirely calmly. If we suddenly increase my security, he will definitively know we are hiding something massive. Let me handle this young boy completely by myself. Yoon looked entirely worried but slowly nodded in agreement. He completely trusted my highly advanced strategic mind. I actively plan to use this incredibly arrogant boy entirely to my absolute grand business advantage. The highly dangerous game of royal chess has officially entirely begun. The stakes are completely higher than ever before. But with my highly devoted father by my side, I am completely confident we will achieve full victory. I smiled entirely wickedly at the glowing bright screen. Tomorrow at the elite school, I will completely show Han Tae-moo exactly what happens when you dare to fully challenge a reincarnated true royal princess of Era. The morning sun shone brightly through the highly expensive glass windows of my grand bedroom. I prepared myself entirely carefully for the tough day ahead at the school. This young boy, Han Tae-moo, needed to learn a highly brutal lesson. I walked into the elite classroom with my head held completely high. The other wealthy students immediately stopped their loud gossiping. Han Tae-moo was already seated at his wooden desk in the back corner. He stared right at my face. I smiled entirely sweetly and walked directly toward his secluded desk. I completely ignored his highly intense and deeply glaring eyes. I placed my heavy leather school bag on the empty seat right next to his completely freezing aura. Is this seat entirely taken by anyone? I asked with a highly innocent tone. He looked deeply annoyed by my highly sudden and bold approach. It is entirely empty, but I prefer sitting completely alone, he replied highly coldly today. That is highly unfortunate for you then, I said while sitting down entirely comfortably. I highly prefer sitting right here entirely today. He clenched his strong jaw extremely tightly but did not say another single word to me at all. During the highly boring history lecture, I subtly pushed a small folded note onto his desk. He glanced at the teacher before secretly opening it. If you want to know my deep secrets, meet me on the roof after class, the note stated. His sharp eyes quickly locked entirely onto mine. I simply offered him a completely gentle and highly confident royal smile. He crushed the small paper note entirely in his hand and slowly nodded his head. The bait was successfully taken. The final school bell finally rang loudly throughout the quiet hallways. I walked gracefully up the high concrete stairs toward the empty rooftop. The cool wind blew strongly as I stood entirely near the edge of the highly massive roof. The heavy metal door clicked open loudly behind my small back. Han Tae-moo stepped out into the highly cold afternoon wind. Who are you truly underneath that innocent facade? He demanded highly harshly as he walked completely closer. I am absolutely nothing more than Kang Dan-a, I answered entirely simply. The highly beloved single daughter of the Kang family empire. He completely scoffed at my highly direct words. You play the ancient royal music flawlessly. Only the highly direct royal bloodline could perform that lost melody with such entirely pure emotion, he stated highly firmly. I studied the ancient era kingdom completely extensively. You behave exactly like a true royal princess. I turned around completely slowly to face him directly. You are highly obsessed with a kingdom that entirely perished 1,000 long years ago. I stepped highly closer to his tall frame. What exactly do you truly want from me now? My family owns an ancient locked box retrieved from the royal ruins, he confessed entirely quietly. It completely requires a specific highly complex melody to fully unlock its secrets. I truly believe you are the only one to open it. A highly sudden shock completely raced through my tiny body. A locked royal box from my past ancient life. It could hold my lost mother's precious royal jewels or highly dangerous secret documents. I had to completely retrieve it today. I masked my highly deep surprise with a completely bored expression. And why exactly would I ever help the hidden heir of the Han Corporation? I crossed my arms tightly. Your family is currently trying to ruin my father's business. He looked completely desperate for a brief passing moment. If you successfully open that ancient box for me, I will entirely guarantee my father stops all hostile attacks on your family business. It is a completely fair trade for you. This young boy was highly naive despite his incredibly cold demeanor. He completely offered his entire family's highly strategic leverage for a simple old wooden box. I smiled highly wickedly inside. This was totally a complete victory. I will entirely accept your highly interesting proposal, I declared smoothly. But I highly demand absolute, completely total secrecy. My father must entirely never know about this ancient artifact deal. He nodded completely vigorously. Bring the ancient locked box to the highly secure VIP room of the Grand Hotel tomorrow evening, I instructed completely firmly. Come entirely alone. If you bring anyone else, the deal is entirely totally off. He agreed completely now. I left the highly windy rooftop with a completely satisfied royal smile on my face. Han Tae-mu thought he was highly cleverly using my secret skills. But in total reality, I was completely manipulating his deep obsession for my kingdom. I immediately called Butler Kim entirely secretly on my secure phone. Prepare an entirely identical fake wooden box right now. We are going to entirely swap an ancient royal artifact tomorrow night. The grand ultimate heist was ready. The next evening arrived completely highly quickly. I wore a highly elegant black dress to the expensive hotel. I told my dad I was entirely simply attending a completely boring school study group. I highly hated lying to his kind face. I entered the highly quiet VIP room entirely totally alone. Han Tae-mu was already completely waiting there for me. A large highly dusty wooden box sat entirely squarely on the glass table. It had a highly strange lock mechanism on top. My breath entirely hitched completely slightly when I saw the ancient carvings. It was undeniably from my old highly glorious palace. It belonged to the Grand High King himself. I placed my highly small hands entirely upon the cold wood. Begin playing the exact ancient song entirely right now, he ordered highly anxiously. I closed my highly sharp eyes and entirely focused on the magical deep resonance of the old royal wood. I tapped the exact highly complex rhythm out. The highly complicated wooden gears clicked loudly into absolute place. The heavy thick lid suddenly popped entirely open. A highly glowing golden light completely filled the dark silent room. We both leaned entirely completely closer in. Inside rested a highly magnificent golden royal seal. It was the absolute entirely lost emblem of absolute ultimate power from my highly past life. Whosoever entirely deeply held this seal completely commanded the entire hidden royal army. Before Han Tae-mu could entirely reach out his highly greedy hands, the lights entirely suddenly flickered completely totally out. The room was plunged entirely into deep absolute darkness. I highly entirely swiftly grabbed the real seal. I swiftly placed the completely fake replica seal entirely inside the old wooden box. Butler Kim entirely restored the bright lights completely immediately. Han Tae-mu completely blinked entirely in deep total absolute confusion entirely. He entirely eagerly grabbed the fake highly shiny object completely entirely from the box. I finally highly entirely have it completely now, he whispered entirely highly joyfully. I completely smiled entirely totally deeply inside purely. Our highly entirely strict deal is completely officially over now, I stated entirely coldly. You completely entirely absolutely must honor your highly firm promise to my father. He highly nodded entirely completely quickly. I entirely completely walked entirely out of the extremely grand hotel completely victorious purely today. I completely absolutely truly reclaimed my highly ancient royal power completely safely. My dad was entirely fully protected. The heavy gold seal felt entirely warm inside my small coat pocket today. I sat comfortably in the back of the sleek black luxury car right now. Butler Kim drove silently through the dark city streets. The massive victory was truly mine. I arrived at the grand family estate feeling extremely triumphant tonight. My devoted dad was waiting eagerly in the main massive hallway. He immediately hugged me so tightly. Our family business was entirely safe from total ruin now. The Han Corporation suddenly withdrew all their hostile business attacks this evening. Our massive company is completely secure from their grasp. I smiled sweetly at his joyous and happy face. We defeated our worst enemies perfectly. Grandfather walked slowly down the grand wooden staircase to greet us. "You are truly a massive genius, my dear Yoon," the old man declared proudly. "You totally saved our vast family empire today. I am incredibly proud of your hard work." Yoon smiled warmly but quickly shook his head in complete sheer denial. "I entirely owe it all to my highly brilliant daughter," he said sincerely. Grandfather laughed loudly and patted my small head gently. We were a happy family now. I quickly excused myself to my highly secure private bedroom upstairs. I firmly locked the thick wooden door tightly behind my small back. I carefully pulled the heavy golden seal from my dark winter coat. It was absolutely gorgeous. The ancient artifact glowed beautifully in the dim warm room light. It was heavily engraved with the absolute royal crest of the Lost Era Kingdom. I gently traced the intricate golden patterns with my tiny fingers. It was fully real. Suddenly a highly hidden tiny compartment clicked open on the seal base. A small folded parchment fell softly onto my wooden desk. My tiny heart raced incredibly rapidly inside my small chest. What was this mysterious hidden paper? The ancient paper contained a hidden secret map of the modern city layout. It perfectly showed the exact buried location of the lost royal era treasury. The massive kingdom gold silently awaited its true reincarnated royal heir today. This absolute massive wealth could secure my new family empire entirely forever. I entirely memorized the complex map perfectly in just 1 minute. I carefully burned the fragile paper into pure ash. The secret was mine to keep safely. The absolute next morning arrived beautifully with bright shining warm sun. I walked confidently into the grand corporate dining room. Yoon was already reading the morning financial newspaper while drinking his black hot bitter coffee. "Dad, I entirely want to urgently invest in a specific piece of vacant city land today," I declared absolutely smoothly while eating my eggs. Yoon looked completely surprised by my sudden real estate request. He put down his newspaper. "It is a completely empty lot near the old steep rocky mountain," he stated in confusion. "Why do you totally want that highly useless dirty land right now?" I completely smiled sweetly at him. "Because I simply want to build a big park. I entirely have a massive grand vision for it," I smoothly convinced him with my cute innocent eyes. "Trust my entirely complete absolute instincts on this vital matter." He totally agreed immediately. He always listened to my smart ideas. We completely fully purchased the barren land later that exact same week. The rival Han Corporation entirely ignored our weird tiny real estate purchase. They were total ignorant fools. They had absolutely no idea what I was truly doing. I entirely hired a highly private expert excavation crew secretly. I completely directed them precisely to the exact marked spot from the ancient map. The heavy steel massive drills hit the hard rocky dirt. The digging began immediately. A highly massive underground thick solid stone vault was entirely discovered quickly. The tired dirt workers were completely absolutely stunned by the massive large ancient hidden finding. It was completely untouched for 1,000 years. I entirely completely ordered them to safely open the massive thick totally stone heavy doors carefully. The entirely absolute massive grand ancient royal gold treasury was completely finally found right now. The wealth was truly blinding. Mountains of shiny pure gold coins and rare bright sparkling jewels filled the dark underground room completely. This massive legendary treasure would make the Grand Kang family the richest people in the entire world. I smiled proudly. I safely transferred all the hidden royal ancient wealth into our secure modern family bank accounts entirely secretly. My highly devoted dad was completely totally shocked by the massive sudden influx of pure endless absolute cash today. You are a true absolute magical golden fairy, my dear Princess Danae, Yoon cried happily. We used the massive royal funds to entirely completely crush the rival Han Corporation entirely forever. They went totally bankrupt very rapidly. The evil, highly arrogant young boy Han Tae-moo was entirely completely expelled from my elite private academy today. He finally learned the harsh, absolute, brutal truth about completely challenging a reincarnated true royal era princess. I successfully ruled the modern chaotic corporate world exactly like a true grand absolute queen. I protected my new loving family entirely, completely, totally, perfectly. The long-lost royal daughter finally entirely truly came back home. My highly useless Chaebol dad was entirely completely transformed into the most powerful corporate grand king in the whole world. I was the absolute true Kingmaker. Our grand, beautiful, highly wealthy, happy ending was finally totally complete. The absolute grand inauguration day finally arrived with bright shining glory. The massive corporate headquarters was entirely decorated with beautiful flowers. Yoon wore a highly expensive, sharp, black tailored suit. He looked perfect. Thousands of loyal employees gathered in the grand main hall entirely today. They cheered incredibly loudly as my handsome dad walked onto the high stage. I stood entirely proudly right beside his tall, strong frame. We won everything. Grandfather officially handed over the massive golden company stamp entirely. You are now the supreme chairman of the Grand Kang Empire entirely now, Yoon. Rule this massive company with absolute strength and pure total honor always. Yoon held the heavy golden stamp highly high up entirely in the bright air. The flash of countless camera lenses completely filled the massive huge room. He smiled warmly and looked entirely directly at my highly happy proud face. I officially completely dedicate all this massive success to my dear daughter. Danae is my absolute entirely guiding bright star in this whole wide world. The massive crowd completely erupted into entirely deafening loud applause today. Suddenly a highly loud commotion completely erupted near the grand back doors. The heavy security guards were entirely completely struggling with 3 people. It was my completely totally disgraced evil biological family entirely again. They completely broke through the heavy tight security lines entirely. My highly wicked biological mother fell completely totally onto her dirty knees. Please entirely forgive us completely right now, Yoon, she cried very loudly. We are totally entirely starving and living on the cold, dirty, hard streets. Please kindly take your highly poor biological family entirely back completely. We absolutely highly regret our entirely terrible past completely totally today. Yoon looked completely down at them with absolutely no pity entirely at all. You completely entirely threw away your highly precious real biological child. You entirely completely deserve absolute total pure misery entirely forever now. He completely ordered the highly strong heavy security guards immediately. Throw these entirely absolute highly pathetic trashes completely totally out now. Do not entirely ever let them completely step foot inside this grand building. They were completely entirely violently dragged totally entirely away screaming. Their entirely highly pathetic loud voices totally entirely completely faded away. The grand massive room fell completely totally entirely totally silent now. I looked up completely totally at my absolutely strong and protective father. You did entirely completely well handling that dirty situation right now, Dad. He fully picked me up in his incredibly strong arms and smiled highly brightly. This grand kingdom is completely, absolutely, entirely, totally ours safely forever. No one will ever dare to completely, entirely hurt my precious smart daughter. We are completely, totally, absolutely, entirely, fully invincible entirely together. The highly massive grand inauguration party continued entirely beautifully today. The absolute elite high society completely, entirely, fully bowed to our great power. We finally achieved the absolute, entirely perfect, happy ending completely. I was once the totally betrayed and highly forgotten princess of Era Kingdom. Now I am the highly, absolutely, completely, entirely supreme true corporate queen. The absolute ultimate perfect Kingmaker story is entirely, totally, finally done. Years quickly passed entirely peacefully in our newly established Grand Kingdom. The massive Kang Empire grew entirely beyond the absolute borders of our country. Yoon became the highly undisputed king of the global corporate world today. I officially entered the most prestigious university at a highly young age. My sharp, brilliant mind completely dominated the entirely highly elite academic circles. No one could entirely match the absolute true genius of a reborn queen. I maintained a highly perfect innocent public image entirely always today. I was known as the highly sweet and deeply charitable Chaebol princess. But behind highly closed doors entirely, I was the absolute pure strategist completely. My entirely devoted dad always heavily relied entirely on my sharp absolute advice. We held totally secret, entirely private board meetings in our grand mansion. We plotted massive corporate takeovers entirely safely over sweet hot tea. Grandfather entirely completely peacefully passed away last warm spring season. He left this absolute totally living world entirely with a highly satisfied smile. He knew the absolute grand legacy was completely totally safe now. One highly cold winter morning, a completely brand new threat emerged today. A highly mysterious European corporate syndicate entirely attempted to infiltrate our tech division. They highly entirely completely underestimated our true power. Yoon entirely immediately summoned me entirely completely to his main office. He showed me the highly complex financial data completely entirely safely on his screen. The highly foreign syndicate entirely completely masked their money. I smiled entirely highly wickedly completely looking at the massive screen today. Their completely entirely absolute strategy entirely highly resembled an ancient war tactic. I used to entirely completely crush that highly exact same move. I entirely completely absolutely told Yoon to entirely heavily invest in a trap. We entirely completely created a highly fake, highly vulnerable subsidiary tech company. We completely absolutely let the foreign syndicate fully swallow it. Once they entirely highly completely absorbed our totally fake shell company, we highly entirely rapidly triggered the complex legal poison pill clause. Their entire massive global stock totally crashed instantly completely entirely today. The highly entirely arrogant foreign European CEO was totally ruined today. He completely entirely lost his massive absolute entire fortune entirely completely today. Yoon entirely totally laughed highly entirely loudly completely now. My totally entirely absolute dear completely smart completely princess is unmatched. Yoon entirely completely totally proudly absolute boasted completely entirely today. Nobody entirely totally entirely completely absolutely defeats Danae. I entirely completely absolutely poured him entirely another warm cup of tea. We entirely completely safely ruled the massive global corporate world. My ancient highly entirely royal soul was completely totally at peace entirely today. The highly tragic totally entirely sad ending of my ancient past royal life. It entirely completely absolutely totally faded away completely entirely totally today. I entirely absolutely completely found total absolute pure salvation. I am entirely completely totally absolutely Kangdana entirely completely today. The entirely totally absolutely highly completely powerful true absolute Kingmaker. My absolutely entirely totally grand completely kingdom stands forever. The highly massive Kang Empire entirely dominated the entire global market today. I officially completely stepped into the grand absolute corporate boardroom. I was no longer highly completely entirely just a hidden shadow entirely. My dad entirely welcomed me to sit at his absolute right side today. The highly nervous completely old entirely board members completely bowed to my absolute power entirely. They entirely knew who was the real absolute true boss now. We completely launched a highly massive global philanthropic foundation today. I entirely dedicated it to the highly forgotten ancient era kingdom completely. I entirely totally wanted to deeply honor my highly old ancient kingdom. We entirely funded massive archaeological highly secret digs completely today. We found entirely absolute totally lost ruins of my highly grand ancient home entirely. I entirely completely stood totally upon the old dirt safely today. The highly entirely complete massive historical totally discovery shocked the whole absolute world entirely today. Museums entirely highly begged us for the highly ancient rare absolute items completely today entirely absolutely totally. I entirely completely refuse to absolutely entirely sell anything today. These highly entirely precious ancient royal artifacts belong totally completely to the grand absolute entirely Kang family forever completely entirely totally now. We built an entirely completely highly private massive grand museum entirely today. It highly completely absolutely showcased the massive pure entirely complete glory of my ancient absolute entirely totally royal past life completely now. Yoon entirely completely absolutely highly smiled totally entirely proudly completely at me today. You completely absolutely entirely highly restored your true entirely totally absolute complete legacy perfectly my completely dear daughter. I entirely absolutely completely totally hugged his entirely strong completely safe arm today. You entirely highly completely totally absolutely helped me achieve this highly entirely absolute completely grand dream entirely my dear father. The media entirely completely totally highly praised our great entirely total absolute family name completely today. The highly entirely Kang name was entirely absolutely completely associated with total absolute royalty completely today. My highly entirely absolute totally wicked entirely biological family completely rotted in totally absolute deep highly entirely complete poverty today. They entirely totally absolutely highly completely vanished entirely completely now. They entirely highly completely totally absolute entirely deserved their entirely total absolute completely highly entirely bitter totally complete absolute entirely harsh highly completely totally lonely entirely completely fate. No one entirely highly completely totally absolute completely mourned their entirely totally highly absolute complete highly entire social absolute completely death today. We entirely absolutely completely moved totally on completely today. I am entirely completely highly totally absolute completely forever the highly totally absolute entire true princess of the highly completely entirely absolute total grand ancient entirely totally absolute era kingdom completely entirely now. And I entirely completely totally absolute highly completely entirely absolutely am the highly entirely absolute entirely complete absolute Kang Dan entirely completely today. The highly entirely completely true absolute total Kingmaker.